Hello and welcome. My name's Jessica Rose. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a bead and chain bracelet. So you can use any beads for this project and any chain. You can make really delicate ones, but I'm going to be working with a nice chunky one. So I've got some quite chunky beads. They're about they're about a centimetre wide on the widest bit, and then I've got quite a nice chunky chain as well, and we're going to be attaching a clasp. And essentially with this project we're learning how to work with a mixture of chain and beads together, and once you can do that you can make so many pieces, so necklaces, whatever it is that you want to make. So what we're going to use for this project, I've got a selection of beads here. So these are around 1 centimetre, and I've got a nice chunky silver plated chain. So you can buy chain like this online from beading supply shops. So I've got a chunky one there. I've got a couple of jump rings. So jump rings are metal circles with a split in the middle. You can buy open jump rings or closed jump rings. We want open ones, and so I've got a couple of sizes here, and also a lobster clasp. And I also have a couple of crimps or crimp tubes, which I'm going to be using for my attachments later. I'll explain more about that. And I have some nylon wire here, which I'm going to use for attaching on my beads. Then have your plier set. So we've got side cutters using to cut bits and pieces. I've got some flat nose pliers, and I've also got some chain nose pliers, which are pointy ones with flat bits on the inside. So let's get started with making our bracelet. The first thing I'm going to do is just work a little bit on my design. So I've got my beading mat here, or you can use a little bit of fabric, and I'm going for roughly a half and half design on my bracelet. So what I would have done before I cut the chain is just measure on my wrist roughly halfway round and make sure that I'm leaving enough of a gap to have a nice selection of area for my beads. And then I'm going to take a nice little length of the nylon thread. I'm going to take much more than I need because I can always cut it down, but it's much harder to add it on, and I'm just going to cut that off. You could also use scissors for that if you don't have pliers. And the first thing I'm going to do is attach one to the other. So I'm going to thread my nylon wire through the end of my chain, and next I want to put my crimp on. So I'm going to place it on the end of the long wire. So a crimp, for anyone who's not used one before, it's literally just a tube. And sometimes they are called crimp tubes. You can get crimp beads, which we don't really want for this project. You can use them, but I prefer to work with the tubes. And make sure that it goes on top of both of the wires. So this bit's really important. And all the way down. And then what we're going to do is we're going to squash the crimp in just a minute, and it's going to hold this nylon wire in place. But I don't want it ultra tight against the chain because it's going to rub and it might cause some friction. So I do want a little bit of a gap. And remember that when I squash the crimp, it's going to disperse a little bit. So I do just want a little gap there just to have a little bit of give. So then I'm going to get my chain nose pliers. Making sure my placement, I'm happy with it. I'm going to place it right directly on top of that crimp bead, or crimp, not crimp bead, and push once firmly. So I want to avoid doing lots of pushes because I can break that crimp. So just once or maximum 2, and then I'm ready to cut off that little excess wire. So I want to keep this long one on. But I'm going to use my side cutters to just go right in there, get as close as I can, and cut it off. Wonderful. So now I'm ready to thread on my beads. So I'm going to go ahead and pop them on. And these are some lovely lapis lazuli beads, which I'm using. But you can use any beads you like. It's a very versatile project. Wonderful. And then I'm just going to check how that looks. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So now it's time for me to add on my clasp to one end and my jump ring onto the other end. So I'm going to add a nice big jump ring on here. I can check the size for you. It is 10 mil, which is 1 centimetre. And I chose such a big one really because I've got a big chunky chain. And then on this side, I'm going to attach my lobster clasp. And I could also use a jump ring here, but because there's a little jump ring on there, I actually don't need that. And I'm going to use my crimp as well. So taking the nylon thread, I'm going to pop on my crimp. And the size of these crimps, they're about 1 millimetre. You can use 0.8, you could use 1.2 or 1.3. You don't want them too big for this project, but I think mine are just roughly 1 millimetre. Then next I'm going to thread on my lobster clasp. And you can buy these clasps online from Amazon, any beading supply store, eBay, lots of options. Silver plated is what I'm using. So I'm threading that wire back through the crimp. So I've put crimp on, then I've got my lobster clasp, now I'm threading it back through. And that's just going to encapsulate it nicely, pull it all the way down. And again, I do want to leave a little bit of a gap here, especially because when you've got a straight length of beads, they take up a little bit more wire once you curve them. And I don't want it to put lots of pressure on the edges. So I'm just going to leave a little bit of room, not loads, but just enough so that as it curves, it still fits nicely. So take a little bit of time to work out your placement of your crimp, and then using my chain nose pliers, just going to push down once firmly to hold it in place and cut off the excess wire. Wonderful, so that side is done. And all that is left to do is to attach my jump ring. So what we're going to do, we're going to open the jump ring with 2 flat pliers. It doesn't matter which ones. I'm going to use chain nose and also my flat nose pliers. But if you have 2 chain nose, that would be fine too, or 2 flat. So jump rings, you always want to open them this way, never sideways. Because if I open them sideways, so this is kind of front to back. If I were to open them sideways, I would distort the circular shape, and it's very difficult to get their integrity back after that. So always open them front to back, place it onto wherever I want it to go, onto my chain. And then what I'm going to do is give it a little bit of a wiggle, because that creates some tension in the metal, and I'm listening out for some clicks. So I'm going to use my 2 pliers to wiggle. You hear those clicks? That's good. It means I'm kind of creating a little bit of tension in the metal because I want it to close really nicely. And I'm almost going past the point of where I want it, so that when I bring it back, it holds that tension together. So I'm confident that that's a nice firm join. And I can go ahead and attach my clasp on. And there we go. We have our completed bead and chain bracelet. Like I said, with these projects, there is so much that you can do. You can explore different designs, different thicknesses of chain, different beads. You can even do ones with multiple layers of beads on, or multiple layers of chain. So have some fun with this one, explore it, and I look forward to seeing the pieces you've made. You can always come and share them with us in the Jewellers Academy Facebook group, or tag us on Instagram or Facebook at Jewellers Academy. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and please come and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we have tons of videos and we're uploading more all the time with jewellery making projects and tips for how to run a successful jewellery business. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on another video very soon.